Welcome back, you're watching Storyboard. Founded in 2003, the Network One is a global network of independent agencies that today boasts of 800 agencies across disciplines and clients including Nokia and Johnson & Johnson. I met its founder, Julian Bolding, at Cannes to understand what it takes to keep the Network One running strong. Understand one thing about Network One. So what is the process of getting agencies on board? Is it you reaching out to them, or do they reach out to you? How does that work?
Well, when we started, we've been going 11 years, and of course we had to reach out to everybody. And that was the first reason we came to Cannes, was we would stand up on the stage and say what we did and wait for people to come up and introduce themselves afterwards. Now we're more fortunate because we're better known, and it's a 50-50 process. Okay. So we will go to a country and do our research and see who's interesting, who's winning awards, who's being talked about, who's getting written in the press, who's got interesting things to say, and we'll go search them out.
You've also said that you help agencies with resources to compete with traditional agencies that belong to big networks in countries. Could you amplify that? Could you tell me what exactly are the resources do you help them with?
Well, the biggest thing that we have is about 800 or more independent agencies all over the world with different skills and different capabilities and different kinds of knowledge. And what we find is people, in an independent environment, people are very willing to share. So if an agency in India has got a client that is going to another country, maybe they need an insight, maybe they need some event organized on the ground, maybe they just need someone to look at their work and say, this is how it would work, or this is how it would not work. So it's people resource primarily. We do also provide some training and development, but the most interesting and useful thing is just to have a friend in 100 different countries.
But are they really friends is what I want to understand, because I would assume that a lot of them may not want to share certain expertise, and how difficult is it to navigate that?
Well, we have a simple principle. If somebody asked you a favor, would you do it? If it's reasonable, you would. So think of it the other way. Don't ask someone a favor that you wouldn't do yourself. But if you would do it for them, they will do it for you.
So it's a clearly give and take kind of a relationship, and that's what you're counting on.
It is. Well, and also we pick agencies that are collaborative. There are a few agencies, would be maybe unfair to name names, that are very talented, they're just not great collaborators. So you admire them, but you tend not to work with them.
So are they part of Network One, or do you sort of slightly leave them out?
Well, we tend to work with them less. It's not that you wouldn't, and there is a time when you just need a talented person who's an individual, or a talented agency that works very much in their own way in isolation. But I think these things are disappearing. It's like, the divisions, people have talked at the festival about the division that used to exist between a creative department and an account department, or strategy or media. And now you can't afford to be divided. You have to know what's going on in the rest of the world and in other disciplines. So if you cannot work collaboratively, you're limiting yourself.
It's more about technology. So you're saying technology has made your life easier then?
No, I don't think I think it's driven by technology and the internet, but it's more driven by the breaking down of barriers. Advertising was over here, PR was over there, and then social media brought them together. And you can't be mono-skilled today like you probably were 5 or 10 years ago.
You spoke to me about how you have been going to different markets and identifying independent agencies. So across the globe, which would be the toughest markets for independent agencies to compete with network agencies?
I don't think there's really a pattern with it. In some ways, the toughest markets are places like China, which get so much attention from the networks. And you do sometimes feel kind of, as soon as somebody's kind of been in business 2 years, has a little bit of talent, won one award somewhere, in comes WPP and buys them up. Well, because some agencies are built to be bought, but other agencies are built to create something a little bit more long-lasting. So there are challenges in that way. It's a question of how visible they are.
What about India? How tough is it for independent agencies to survive? Because you lost one to a network, to a holding company recently.
Well, we were sorry about Law and Kenneth because we were great friends, and it's a fantastic agency. It doesn't stop being a great agency because they're now sort of bailing out Saatchi, as far as I understand. But when one comes, when one goes, another comes. So some of the really best agencies that we're working now with did not exist when we first came to Cannes. You know, I remember having lunch with Raj Kurup of Creative Land Asia on the beach before he started Creative Land Asia. And he said, I want to talk to you because we're going to do this thing. It's going to be a great agency and it's going to be international and we're going to set up in Bangkok and Singapore and places as well. So he had a vision already, even if he hadn't begun the business yet. And this year, when I was in Mumbai a couple of months ago, what I was particularly doing was seeking out some of the new generation, if you like, of digital agencies. So people like, you know, the 120 Collective, or IBS, which is now getting a lot of traction. But, you know, a couple of years ago, you know, how many people had heard of IBS? It was a tech company.
But then how do you retain them and what do you offer? Because like you mentioned, like China, India is another market that holding companies have their eye on because it's an emerging market.
Well, I think if somebody's born to be bought,
then you can't help it.
Well, no, you can. You can.
Okay.
You have to help them to sell at the right time.
Okay.
Because of course the holding company would much rather buy them when they're 2 years old and they're worth this much, rather than 10 years old and they're worth this much. But I think the real people we hold on to are the people who are entrepreneurs themselves. And you know, there's a great tradition of entrepreneurialism in India. And some people just do not want to be an employee of somebody else, and they tend to be people who have more of a vision, can be more difficult to work with, and I don't mean they're uncollaborative, but maybe just a little bit more demanding. They're the people we really love to work with. And I think I have a particular vision as well, and this is a very strong point for me with India. India is got such a great tradition of building companies. It's a country which now is much more engaged with the rest of the world than it used to be. India has started as a nation to buy great global companies. Yeah, Jaguar Land Rover is one which I see a lot from the UK, of course, and they're running the business very, very well. Now, when is an Indian-owned agency going to start coming out of India and buying other agencies? Because this is a step that India should be ready to take.
You know, as the agency models change, what kind of work are you doing with the independent agencies to ensure that they keep pace with the evolution? Because they don't have the kind of size and resources to necessarily make that change.
I'll give you an example. We founded the business working with advertising and paid communications. Now we also do a lot of work with PR. PR has changed hugely through social media. If you was at a conference where the head, I think, of communications for AT&T said if we have a real crisis, we used to have 2 days to get everything under control.
Now you have 2 minutes.
Well, 2 minutes, pretty much that's the case. So what we did recently, and we've done this in 2 or 3 countries, we've done it in Hong Kong, we've done it in London, we're going to do it in Miami, is create a social media crisis simulation. So you get groups of people in a room and you have a fake equivalent of Twitter or an equivalent of Facebook or equivalent of other social media that the people can use responding to an unfolding crisis, with a backroom team feeding in kind of more problems. So you get a team of people within 3 hours, they've handled an entire social media crisis. So it's technology enabled. It's a clever company that's developed a variety of means to do this. And you might think, well, you know, the big holding companies would have this and they'd be training everybody. But it's not necessarily that they think of the idea of the way that training needs to be done. So training is not traditional, training is of the moment. And because what we're doing is we're not employing people, we're looking for people who've got an idea or another way to train or to teach.
And to work for them to work together.
Yeah, bring them in. I mean, it's commercial. You know, the agencies will pay. But if you put 20 independent agencies into a room, they can afford more than one holding company network.
Our coverage from Cannes doesn't end there. This weekend, we will be airing 2 more episodes, one with interviews with big marketers, McDonald's, Mondelez and Coca-Cola, and the other with conversations with the digital guys, that's Twitter, BuzzFeed and Microsoft, on our special storyboard at Cannes shows. Everybody just wants viral content, so I'm going to ask you, what is the formula? Is there one?
I'm going to look directly into the camera and say, there is actually no perfect formula.
We're going to see more and more intelligent wearable technologies.
Okay.
So things that help
And
us make decisions.
And how will Coca-Cola be leveraging all of those?
So at the low end, what we need to be able to do is know that you're thirsty, you're standing at the bus stop, and we can inspire you with something to go step into the 7-Eleven behind you and buy a thumbs up or buy a Coke.
As an industry, we sat there and said, well, we won't invest in new because we can't measure it, but we only invest in things that we can measure. So at the end of the day, it's a vicious cycle where we're never going to invest because we can't measure, and we can't measure, so we're not going to invest, right? These are the largest transformations in the way that we can connect with our consumers in the history of man. And we're going to sit back and say we're not going to do it because we can't measure it.
And finally, here's an exclusive preview of the new commercial from Eveready. Remember the Give Me Red campaign? It's back, conceptualized by Rediffusion YNR. The campaign breaks next week.
कोई बोरिंग गेम अरे कुछ नया खेलते हैं ना
Come on, everybody, let's sing and shout to the groovy thing. Let me show you how.
Give Me Red has always been our DNA across. We are re-energizing it, revitalizing it this time to address 2-3 very basic things which we thought was important. Showcasing the entire product portfolio range was one objective, and then to keep the brand alive in the consumer's mind, to keep connecting with him all the time, that energy, that youthfulness, to tell the consumers that yes, the brand that you trust is always there for you.
We had to do an idea, a story that celebrated not just Give Me Red, but to incorporate seamlessly all these other offerings that they have in the market. Because they touch so many target audiences, we wanted to make it very participative, very celebratory. So hence this whole idea of having a concert, a live concert, a gaming concert, which gets started by our protagonist, which is Akshay, and then he involves the whole city and your entire landscape becomes a game zone.
And that's all the time we have on the show this week. Stay connected. We're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and there's always the brands page at firstbiz.com. Until next week then, many thanks for watching.